I thought Al was going to do the intros. Looks like I'm doing the intros. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Comic Crusaders. I am Bracey, and tonight I am having the great pleasure of interviewing a true comic legend, one Erik Larsen, famously known for doing books such as Spider-Man and, of course, The Savage Dragon. And we're here to talk about his new series, Ant.
Oh
Erik,
boy.
yeah, man, it's a pleasure to meet you. I've been a fan of yours for quite a long while, so this is really exciting for me.
All right. Well, pleasure to be here.
Well, getting to a few particulars here, I got a few questions pulled up. Just to get into a little bit of a history for newer people who might not know a whole lot about you. Um, you're most famous, I'd say, for doing Savage Dragon. When the big Image split off happened in the '90s, you did your own creator own property. And
Mhm.
I know for myself, that was a really interesting concept because I was used to superhero comics, but you took your superpowered individual and you made him a police officer,
Mhm.
which was just a mind blowing idea to me at the time. And you managed to combine a lot of drama with a lot of the fantastical elements that we expect out of a superhero comic. Uh, what pushed you in that direction? What was the impetus behind that?
I had created the dragon character when I was a little kid,
Mm-hmm.
so I had written and drawn just a ton of his adventures when I was a real little kid, like starting from fourth grade up. I drew like 60 different comics with the dragon in it, and a bunch of other things too. I did the Deadly Duo and a bunch of other comics. So I had this kind of backlog of all this story. And by the time I got to the end of it, me and a couple buddies had self-published a fanzine called Graphic Fantasy. And that was kind of the end cap of those stories. It was like, okay, it's all been leading up to this. This is my big story here, and this is now going into the big time publishing and whole bit. So when I started at Image, kind of my thought was, well, I eventually want to get to that same point where I had gotten to before, but because I created this comic when I was, a real little kid and just didn't have any sense of how the world worked, I thought, well, why don't I'll end up there, but I'm going to start someplace completely different. And then and then I went back and was like, all right, well, what would logically lead to him being uh, the ex-head of a government super team, which is what he was. Um, and so it was like, well, maybe he could have started off as a policeman, because I had a friend who was a cop, and it's like, all right, well, I could see somebody getting some, sort of training and getting kind of work your way up the ranks, sort of like becoming a cop and then going on and becoming an FBI guy or whatever. It seemed at the time that made sense. I don't know if it makes any sense at all, but at the time it was like, oh, this perfect sense.
I was definitely on board because it was a really new and really exciting approach, I thought, to the superhero genre. And one of the things I love most is that you would put into like the trades that I collected, your sketchbook from
Yeah.
when you were a kid and all these iterations of the
Well,
dragon.
it wasn't when I was a kid. My house burned down in 1991, so everything prior to that was gone. And
Oh
one of the
wow.
things I tried to do, to recover a lot of the stuff that I lost, was to fill up a sketchbook with kind of memory sketches of, well, this is what this character looks like. I remember that. I'm going to put him down on paper. Okay, and then there's this version. I'm going to put this down, so I can just try and remember all the crap that I came up with. And I know there's an awful lot of stuff that I did that will just be lost. It'll be lost
Yeah.
to time. Some of it was super derivative, to say the least, where it's like, well, that
I
guy's
remember
clearly
the
just
I
Dr.
remember
Fate
the
with a
kind of
different
the
name.
Gotchaman style costume that you had for the dragon.
What was that?
I remember the kind of the Gotchaman style costume you had for the dragon, the battle beyond the planets.
Hmm.
I know you said like Speed Racer was one of the influences, but when I looked at this one particular costume where you had like the long pointy nose and you had the cowl with the fin, it always
Yeah.
reminded me of another '70s anime that made its way over here.
No, that didn't make it to me. Mine was like, for some reason, some Batman comics were kind of my jumping off point. So
Mm-hmm.
when you had the cowl and the cape and the utility belt and all that, there was just Batman,
Because I believe
instead.
you had him in that sketch in Bell Bottoms too.
Yeah, well, that was everybody was rocking bell bottoms in the 70s. There wasn't
Yeah.
anything I could do about that. Just a dedicated follower of fashion.
Well, one of the cool things about the sketchbook is like, so you're recreating these memories. So you drew all these iterations of the dragon that you'd drawn coming up, from
Mhm.
having like the very small fin to, like I said, the more anime inspired costume, and somehow, some way, you managed to incorporate all of those crazy ideas that you had a kid into the narrative of the dragon as you went along. And everything from him like being from space to like having the Batman sort of thing where he possesses the body of his fellow cop and he's running around like
Yeah,
Batman, and that was all pretty glorious. I love the way you managed to work all that in.
yeah, that's fun. It's a fun time there.
Hmm.
Yeah, I had to. I felt like, oh, I get all this stuff in, and then I redrew issues. Graphic Fantasy issues 1 and 2 became Savage Dragon. What was it? 64 and 63 and 65, I think.
Hmm.
So I eventually did. I mean, if you had put the two next to each other, it's like, oh, these are the same damn thing. Um, Pretty close, whatever. Some things had to be changed because I didn't quite get everything all lined up the way I wanted, but I did what I could.
Well, this leads me into my first question about your new project here, Ant. Uh, Thinking about your sketchbook, and as anybody who wants to be a comic artist, or just draw their own comics, uh, the character in this, Hannah Washington, she also escapes through her creativity, through her doodles, through her drawing of superheroes and villains, and I can't help but wonder, is there a little bit of you in here? Do you identify with Hannah in some way?
Um, I mean, you have to when you're writing or drawing anything is find a place that seems familiar or ways of identifying with whatever character you're working on. So sure, that's in the mix there somewhere.
All right. So let's see. So, uh, I have a question about the origin of Ant here. In my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong
All
here.
right.
When Mario Gully first created Ant,
Uh-huh.
he's a very big fan of Image, Todd McFarlane in particular, I believe,
Mhm.
and I think he even tried to pitch it to Image or submit it. And finally, he searched around house after house and house, and he found a studio with Arcana.
Mhm.
And at a later point, when the series was gaining some traction, did it catch your eye in particular? Were you the one who courted him to bring him into Image? How did all
Uh,
that
he,
happen?
he kept pitching it to me. By that point, I was the publisher, as I recall.
Hmm.
So he kept going. He kept trying. So he would send me books, and we talked. I don't know if we talked on the phone. We must have talked on the phone at some point early on there. But he had. All right. Well,
You got
thanks
a
for
fan, man. There you go.
that. Okay.
One of many.
Um, so basically, what it was is he pitched it, and I had read the material that I had seen, and in the material, um, basically was the story of a little kid who lived this tortured existence and was constantly being tormented by kids at school and not getting along with folks, and just basically was her struggle. And then her escape was she had this journal that she would draw the adventures of Ant in, and while the stuff with the little girl was really compelling, the problem with it as a character, and a character that could interact with the Image universe, was that Ant wasn't real. And it was, it was just the kid's imagination running wild. So there wasn't any way that Ant could really team up with Savage Dragon, or really meet Spawn, or really interact with any of the Image characters, because it's, a childhood fantasy of this little girl. And I guess, it's conceivable that she could draw those characters in her journal, but it wouldn't be quote unquote real. And so my talk with him was, let's kind of flip the script on here and have it that, now she's an adult, now she's a superhero. And when we want to show her as a little girl, that stuff will be flashbacks. So while the human being little girl stuff won't be as immediate, because you end up with the Superboy syndrome, where well, Superboy grows up to be Superman, so how much danger can she really be in? But now the superhero stuff would have that. So she could really be in danger now, and how are you going to cope with whatever problem you got going on? So we ended up talking it through quite a bit. I arranged so that he could have Spawn show up in an early issue. I, of course, let him use Savage Dragon. That was an easy one. I had done cover sketches for him for the first 2-3 issues, just as a way of talking him through it. How are we going to do this? How are we going to figure this out? So there's a lot of back and forth that went on, and then he did the book, and initially it was going great guns, and then gradually tapered off, and there was kind of a myriad of problems. He didn't quite have figured out how to do everything. There was sort of a big jump in time with the character, where for some reason Ant was famous and had all kinds of adventures, but we didn't get to see those adventures or really know why she was famous. And then there would be issues that he decided later on, oh, this didn't really happen, this was all just in her head. And he ended up basically tossing out most of the first 4 issues of the series and relegating that to being a dream, which, I mean, as a reader, if I'm invested that 4 issues into a series and then finding out, oh no, that was all nonsense, it's like, oh, that's not a good way to start off a book.
And
then there was flash forwards and flashbacks, and he started working with other writers, and everybody kind of had a different idea of how it would work, and everybody was kind of putting a lie to whatever came before. So writing wise, it was kind of a mess, and then schedule wise, it just got to be slower and slower with longer gaps between issues, and eventually it just kind of ran out of steam. And Mario thought, well, I'll go do some stuff over at Marvel. He had gotten some work over there to, I think he had adapted a couple classic books or something.
I think he
Treasure Island
did Treasure
something.
Island, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, all right, well, I'll go do this, and this will get me great attention, and then I can bring that audience over to Ant. And it's like, well, it didn't really get you the attention you thought it might. And then, Ant at that point was so late that it really wasn't just recovering. So, he just kind of lost steam, and I think kind of lost his mojo to do the thing. And eventually he was like, I think I'm just going to end this. And he contacted me at one point and said, I don't know how to end this, or I don't know what to do. And I was like, dude, you just end it with the issue you're working on. Just, bring that story to a close. And he's like, I can't think of a way of closing this off. It doesn't make I can't do it. So I said, well, send me what you got. And he sent me the first 7 pages that he had on his computer. And I was like, all right. So I'm just going to take it from here, and I'm going to do layouts and finish your story and send it back to you. And he's like, all right. So I did these layouts and sent it back, and time went on, and more time went on. And then eventually he contacted me again and said, well, I got another problem. I had a falling out with the writer that I was working with. I can't use one of the characters that's in the story because it's kind of owned by him and me, so I can't use his character. I thought, all right, that's a problem. And those 7 pages that started this story, well, my computer crashed or whatever. He had something where he lost those 7 pages, so he didn't even have those. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll do layouts for 7 more pages. so I did that. And it's like, here's 7 more pages. Now you got the story starts with, so now it's like those 7 pages had to bridge the gap between the old end of issue 11 and wherever I kicked in. So I had to come up with some different nonsense that made sense there. And then he just didn't get around to doing it. It just didn't quite happen. He had done 1 page and then kind of veered off in crazy town in terms of the story there. He just went off in a really different, weird direction with it. And I was like, yeah, man, not like that. And it just time went on. It just, days would go and weeks and months. And suddenly it's like, oh, a year has passed. And now 2 years have passed. And now it's an even bigger gap. And then eventually he contacted me and he was just like, I think I want to sell my character. He had got an offer from somebody else. He didn't say who, to buy his character. And he said, I got this offer to sell my character, but if you want to buy it, I'll sell it to you. And it was like, what the hell? I'd never bought anybody's character before. It never even occurred to me to ever do such a thing.
Right.
But I liked the character. I liked the way the character looked. I liked some of the ideas that went into his original comics. I thought it was kind of all over the place in terms of storytelling and everything else, but I thought there was some solid ideas in there. So I thought about it a little bit and then decided to, go ahead. Yeah, I don't think he liked what the other guy had in mind for his character.
Mm-hmm.
He had done some stories that were more quote unquote mature, and I think his thought was, oh, he's going to really push it in that direction, and I don't really want that for my character. Whereas I'd kind of been saying, no, you got to do this like Spider-Man. You could do like a cool Spider-Man kind of book because she crawls walls and fights crime and does all this Spider-Man stuff. You should be doing that. And then so now he was like, all right. I guess I'll do a Spider-Man book. I can do that. So that's how that came about. And here I am.
I mean, that's really interesting. It actually dips into a lot of things I wanted to ask you because I can definitely see a progression in his art when he comes over to Image. And I don't know if it's just the influence of having all you elder statesmen, as it were, being surrounded by that sort of talent and those kinds of people to bounce ideas and techniques off of. But looking at the story and everything you've just said, that really speaks to his infancy as a writer, if you will, his lack of
Mhm.
experience, and that seems to have been his fatal flaw, unfortunately. Uh, but that's really pretty
Well,
interesting.
a lot of people have that. If you read the early Image comics, you'll see
Hmm.
that there's a lot of that going on there.
Oh, for sure.
You don't like you start reading Wildcats and you go, this doesn't start at the start of anything. You're just presuming that all this stuff that's been going on before has always been going on, and we're just picking it up in the middle of an adventure.
Hmm.
And Youngblood is the same thing, and a lot of these just, hey, this is a group of guys who's never had to even do an issue one before. They don't know what that's all about. They don't know that you got to set up all these stuff and do origins of your characters and start at a start. And so Mario is very much doing that when he did Ant at Image, where it's like, I'm going to have her already be famous. Like, no, no, no. You got to show us why she's famous. You got to
Yeah,
get that part of the story told. Like, why is she a big deal? So it's like, all right,
yeah,
here's why she's a big deal.
that
Let's
definitely
do
struck me
that.
as weird because I'm reading those issues and I'm like, okay, she's had some sort of mental thing. She doesn't remember her past, but everybody she meets in the Image world knows her and has apparently worked with her. And
Yeah,
there's
and they've had
posters
some
banned, and I
some
was like,
great adventure
how does
together.
this fit into the continuity if we've never seen this character before?
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess. And also, at some point, he decided, oh, I'm going to do some stories that establish she was there from the beginning. So, 1992, here we go. She was around in 1992. Let's do a whole story about in and around that. And I'm sitting here doing comics now, going, well, wait a minute. 1992 was 30 years ago. And if you're putting actual dates on stuff and saying this is 30 years ago,
Hmm.
what is she, 45 years old? That seems, to start a new book with a young character who's only 45 seems like that's not no way to start. So
Yeah, it definitely
plus
got
I,
weird.
I am kind of starting a little bit in her past. I do start off with her like a little kid writing in her book, and then we hit the highlights basically rather than dwell on every single day. But sheesh.
Let's let's get into that a little bit because one of the things I wanted to ask you is for you what's the appeal of Ant, and I think you've spoken to a bit of that already, not in particulars, but in a bit of generalizations. And I also wanted to ask you why the retcon. I think we've kind of established that, given how weird the previous things got. Uh, but so you're doing your own thing. You're actually introducing her properly into the Image
Well,
universe.
yeah, and I'm actually acknowledging a lot of what Mario did. And
Hmm.
if you have read the other stuff, there's touchstones in there where I'll go, hey, remember that time she went to a comic book convention in issue
Yeah.
one of Mario's Aunt? Here she is going to a comic book convention, and I'm swiping the same panels and doing like, here it is. They're going, it's the same situation.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to have this panel because that doesn't make any sense, but I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do this. And, and just kind of put it in its place. Like, let's put these in chronological order. This happens this, and then this happens there, and then this goes from there to there. So, whew.
It did make me wonder if there was going to be some sort of overlap between the previous series and what you're doing now, because I could see that you're putting those elements in, or if that's just an alternate reality, we want to say at this point.
Um, I'm not going to say it didn't happen. Most of the stuff I can look at and go, it's fine. The only part that I can't really use or address is the 3 issues that directly, it's kind of where Mario's last 3 issues. I can't really use those in any form.
Right.
So because of that, I gotta kind of have to essentially say that stuff didn't happen. So that's the only 3 that are kind of like, okay, well, this stuff is not really real exactly, but I don't know. I mean, I think I address it enough that you can go, oh, okay, this is what happened, and now this is the same events, but they're in a different order, and there's a more consistent narrative and stuff like that. And some of it I'll just touch on briefly, and some of it I can dwell on more. But he seemed to have an issue with kind of introducing things, like suddenly Hannah would be living in an apartment somewhere, but she didn't meet the guy. She now is living there, but we never saw her get the apartment. So it's like, well, let's see that at least. Can we just have those characters meet each other for the first time? That sort of thing.
Yeah, because he would have dialogue boxes where, like, I'm at a comic book convention, although I don't know how I got here. And so Hannah became this very unreliable narrator when you're reading it.
Yeah.
Nice.
That guy.
So why it's been about 10 years since Aunt last appeared. Why bring her back now? Did you just get a cool new idea, or just felt like scratching that itch? How'd that come about?
Kind of the pandemic rolled around, and it's like, all right, I got some hours to fill. What can I do here? And also what happened was, because I had done those layouts for Mario years and years and years ago, those were just sitting around. Nobody drew them. So they were just in layout form. And so at one point, I was like, I'm just going to blow these up and then kind of trace them off. And then there will be a comic. And so that was kind of what I did, was like, I'm just going to blow this up. And then, and I just kind of was picking away at it as kind of warm up stuff between doing other things. And eventually it was like, I've got this comic done. I might as well publish this thing. And then at that point, it was like, well, now that I've ended the old series. I did an issue 12 was my real first issue. So it's like, all right, now that I've done an issue, why not do another and try that out? So mostly my process is I will do thumbnails, and then I'll blow them up and kind of outline those, and then do a little bit of brush stuff on her costume itself and spotting some shadows. But mostly I wanted to do kind of do like a European look where there was kind of a dead line outlining everything, and then do the rest of the stuff with a brush, and then do color. I'm coloring it myself, so that's fun.
I didn't know you gotten into that. Now, so you still draw physically. You don't do anything digital, I take it by what you said. And as I recall,
yeah, it's all physical.
I saw something you were working. You work actually much larger than your typical comic artist, and this allows you to squeeze a lot into the panels.
Yeah, it depends on what it is. Sometimes I'm working huge, and sometimes I'm working tiny, and I'm all over the map.
Just whatever it calls for.
Yeah, it's a little bigger than most standard comic art is, and Savage Dragon is too. But I was working twice up for a while there, and it just got. I was having problems with it. Every size I have problems. Every size there's an advantage and there's a disadvantage.
Right.
to doing stuff different ways. Like, oh, I can pack in more detail, but you tend to at least with me when I'm working real big, is I would get kind of lost in a figure. Like you're working on the top and then you're working on the bottom and then you pull back and you go, oh, that guy's legs are super big. That's crazy looking.
I'll
Or
tell you. Oh, please go ahead.
because it's just so big, it's taking up so much real estate in your world that you're not really taking it all in at once. And I was finding I was giving people these really weird narrow hips. And I was like, well, that's no good. I don't like that. I like that I could cram in more detail and get
Mhm.
more, my small figures were suddenly being able to tighten up a lot more. So it's like, all right, I like that, but then this part isn't working out so well. And then also just with the way I hold a brush and the way I hold a pen, I was finding that I couldn't maintain a nice long swooping line. It would get all kind of wiggly. So I was like, well, that part sucks too, because now that it's super big, some of this stuff just doesn't work very well anymore.
Mm.
And then I did a couple issues of Savage Dragon where I'm like, I'm just going to do pages on various sizes depending on what needs to be done. So it's like, here's a page which is just a close up on somebody's face. I'm going to draw that page tiny. It's just going to be like really small. And then the next page would be like, oh, but I got a lot of stuff I got to fit in here. So I'll draw this the size of a barn door. And so that the original on a couple issues of Dragons, it's just like, oh, it's all these various sizes. And then I'm just scanning it in my computer and just adjusting them all to be the same size so that the letterer didn't lose his mind.
So your working style is almost as mad as your stories.
Yeah, it was so crazy. It was all over the place, and it was like, all right, let's try this out and see how this works. And say, oh, okay, this is chaos. Then keeping the width of the panel borders and all this stuff just became an ordeal. So I was like, all right, this is clearly unworkable. So now I'm working a size that's slightly bigger than the size that's conventional and everybody works. So it's a little bit bigger, but not crazy big.
It's
So
funny. It's funny when I first started. Well, not when I first started drawing comics, because I think like everybody, I started drawing comics in my spiral notebooks that were left over from school, and then discovering the Marvel tryout book, which had the legitimate comic books page, and I was like, those guys are working this big, and I've been trying to draw really detailed things all super tiny. I got really mad finding out that they work so big.
I was drawing on 8.5 by 11 folded in half. It was folded in half. So my pages were like smaller than printed size. So I was cramming in all sorts of stuff in these tiny like, all right, I thought that was cool.
I actually got mad at some of the artists because like Spider-Man was like my favorite hero for almost forever, right? And then whenever they wouldn't draw webs on Spider-Man to like, save time because he was small in the panels, like, yeah, but he's this big. You could have drawn the webs. What are you doing?
Way big. What are you doing?
It's funny.
Now,
now
when I was on Spider-Man, I never did that. I was always like, I'm going to give him webs no matter how tiny he got.
I appreciated that.
I always thought that was a cheat. I was like,
it is.
It's
a big cheat. It is such a big cheat. Like, and it's. I tell you what's absurd. Like, don't go digital. Keep doing what you're doing, because now I obsess over pixels. I zoom in. It's like, why am I zooming in? Nobody's going to see this, you moron. Zoom back out.
Yeah. No, that's the worst when you I'll even do that with color stuff. You'd be like, oh, I got to get in there, and it's like you zoom back out, and you go, you can't even see it. What the hell?
Yeah,
that was just hours lost.
It's funny because I think all of us artists have a certain level of OCD to us. It just comes with the territory. I got to say, there's nothing I like more than interviewing a comic book creator and seeing long boxes behind them. That always gives me a special little thrill in the heart.
There's a bunch. I got a bunch of I got comics all over the place, and a basement full of them.
Now,
plus spinner racks and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
oh, Spinner X, you are the man. Let me ask you something that we discussed on Twitter a little bit, and I think what you said to me was really important, and I would like
I don't know what that could be.
yeah, we'll get there. I'd like for creators who are out there creating their projects, because your logo is just as important as your character. This is your branding.
Mhm.
And when I immediately spotted is like, okay, this looks very much like the old original Jack Kirby, Stanley, Thor, the logo, but you tweaked it and you made it your own for the new Ant.
Mhm.
And I thought that was kind of a weird decision. And you explained to me is like I wanted something that was easy to read, and I like that retro style. Um, but those are really important things to consider, because when I look at some logos for books, some of them are like really nice when you get up on them and look at
Yeah,
them,
yeah.
but you might pass that by on the rack.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. That was the thing about ROM Space Knight is
mm,
ROM, you said 3 letters, and it's like you can read this thing from across the room, you know? It's like I never had trouble finding ROM on the newsstand. There's
mhm.
three damn letters and they're huge. And the middle O is just a big old circle. It's like this could not be the easiest title to read. And that was one of the appealing things about Ant is like, I got 3 letters.
Yeah,
Let's make those the biggest 3 letters we can do. And so I was, looking at all these old Marvel logos and different stuff. I was like, all right, what's the typeface where I can get the biggest, juiciest logo here? So yeah, that's what that
and
was all
that's
about.
always something else I always appreciate about your work. Now, when I look at your artwork, I see a lot of Jack Kirby influence, and I feel like guys like you, Walt Simonson, and to a degree, John Romita Jr. You guys like these big, blocky, cinematic,
Mhm.
dynamic figures that pop off the panel, and so you've got that pedigree. But you've also taken with that. I've heard you tell people before, like don't everybody try and be Brian Hitch with your costumes. He wants to make these really complex costumes with all the panel linings, like, because you're going to have to draw this a lot.
Yeah. Well, and also at some point you're going to be drawing a panel where they're an inch tall.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, can you even tell who the hell that character is if he's got, a costume like Jericho from the Teen Titans, where you're just like, he's got so many little pieces of crap on him. When you're drawing him that tall, he just like, oh, what the hell am I even looking at? This thing's a mess. And that's the problem with a lot of those is that uh, they're not very iconic in a way, and they kind of need to be in
Mm-hmm.
order in order for this stuff to work. Um, it's like I need to be able to make him tiny, and I need to be able to make him huge. And the thing with drawing characters huge is you can always add stuff to them. You can always just come in and go, I'm gonna put a bunch of cross hatching. I'm gonna put secondary light sources and just make them look crazy cool. And you look at like Jim Lee did a run on Batman years and years and years ago. And it's like that was back when he had the simple costume. He didn't have all the weird piping lines and all the strange belts and stuff. He was wearing typical Batman stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but Jim could just trick the crap out of him and do all this light source stuff and make him look cool. At the same time, Alex Toth could draw that same costume and make it super stripped down, and you still go, oh, that's the same damn guy. Look at that. Both guys are doing the same thing, and it just worked. And that's the thing, like Ant is one of those simplest costumes where you go, it's just a red naked woman with no face, little things for eyes and a couple of antennae, and it's like, and that's it. It's like that's like a Silver Surfer kind of design. You go, there's just so little to it. At the same time, though, you can come in and go, I'm going to put this metallic sheen on here and
Mm-hmm.
just trick out the lighting on this and make it super reflective and interesting. And and then that becomes the detail that you're looking at it or catches your eye, whatever.
I gotta say that's one of the things that I think when I first saw Gully's turn on the character when he introduced her is like it's so immediately eye-catching in its simplicity, and yet it's got this silhouette. It's like you said, it's like Batman. Everybody knows Batman's silhouette, and you see this female form in this cat suit with these big antenna coming off, and that's Ant.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Can't
Yeah,
be anybody but
that's the
Ant.
deal. It's like it's so simple, and it's just so simple. That's what you want. I want
Mhm.
something that's super simple, but can be dressed up and can be made interesting and something you can do something with.
And yeah,
I
that's
think people get really caught up in I want to make this costume like super cool. Basically, it's like let me design a costume that anybody can draw, and then just let them go to town on it. Because the problem with like a lot of the new 52 stuff that they had a bunch of different guys work on, it's
mhm.
like, yeah, you know what? This stuff looks pretty cool when this one guy who created it draws it. But when anybody else draws it, it looks clumsy. It looks weird. It just doesn't look that good. So I don't want that. Don't give me that. Don't have George Perez design every character. Have somebody who's going to give me something super simple and then come in there and do something interesting with it.
I was actually going to say Jim Lee because when I think of Wildcats, as much as I love Jim Lee's art, I look at each of those characters and like, oh, this guy's Spartan. It's like, well, what about him says Spartan? He doesn't look like he's a
Yeah,
a Hippolyte or anything like that. I don't get the reference until I get to know the character because of his sort of stoicism and things. And I I guess I'm just old school like that. When I look at Superman, Batman, the Flash, Spider Man, Thor, these guys, I kind of character, I get it instantly. And
yeah,
again, that's the appeal of somebody like Ant. You get it as soon as you see it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the idea.
Let's see what else I got
Oh,
here.
good.
Let's see. We talked about the logo there. Now, you told me that you drew this logo personally. Do you draw all your logos? Like, did you draw the Savage Dragon logo, or did you have somebody
The
develop that for you?
Savage Dragon logo. I did a rough, crappy pass at it, and then Chris Iliopoulos designed the actual logo,
Hmm.
and then I kept screwing with it afterward. I mean, if you look at it now, you'll note that that the logo has been squished considerably, and then it used to say the Savage Dragon. I took out the and just made it Savage Dragon. So it's it's I so initially it was Chris, but eventually it was mushed quite a bit for me.
So Andy Kuhn's asking us, since you're taking a catch-up break on publishing Dragon, will Ant be on the same hiatus till June or July?
It will not be. No, there was a break from solicitations, I think, for 1 month. So I think the next issue of Ants out in May. So hopefully, hopefully I can get my act together. That's the idea, is that I'll get my act together.
Which brings me to another point. Is Ant going to be continue to be an ongoing series? Do you see it
Yeah,
more
that's the
for
idea.
okay,
It probably won't be monthly. It'll probably more.
kind of like arcs?
I don't even know. I don't even know. It'll just depend on how much I can get to it. Probably 8 issues a year, something like that. Eight to 10, hopefully. And then Dragon usually I get about 10 issues a year done. So hopefully I can get back on that track. I just wrote myself into a corner on Savage Dragon.
Uh, what issue are you up to now on Dragon?
Uh, 262.
Okay, because I believe you're trying to you're trying to beat Dave Sim was your initial goal.
Yeah, eventually I'll get there. It's taking a lot longer than I thought it would.
I mean, because
I kept doing other stuff is a problem. It's like I did 10 issues of Spawn. What the hell was I
yeah.
thinking there? You know,
I
I
mean,
did
in
6 issues of Supreme
in
at
some
this
ways
point.
you kind of outdone him because like he was doing a character from birth to death, but you actually started with the father of that character, and now you have Dragon 2 from birth
Yeah, yeah,
to I
yeah.
guess to death, and you can even go another generation because he's
Oh
got
yeah,
kids.
yeah. Because I got the next generation all lined up.
Yeah, this can go until you are done.
Until I'm done, yeah. And who knows when that is. You know, hopefully it'll have a rousing conclusion, but you know, maybe not.
Okay, now one of the things I think is kind of cool about the current series is now when you first started Savage Dragon, I thought it was fairly serious. It had a lot of drama. You played with a lot of serious stuff.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, Dragon had to deal with some real world stuff, something that you didn't see from a lot of superheroes. But you also started slipping in your own kind of sense of humor. Like the gag names used to crack me up. The like Officer Bendover and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm a,
And you know, then you just over time you just kind of ramp it up. You know, like you do
yeah,
get a little full Monty Python as you go. uh, One of the fun things with Ant here is because uh, you have these flashbacks. You know, she's a young girl creating things, so she's creating them like a child would create them. You know, so she's got like the really extreme villains with the really goofy names and all that.
yeah.
Is is Ant eventually? Are we? Is Ant going to get as wild and crazy as Savage Dragon, or do you have a different view for Ant continuing?
I want the books to be somewhat different from each other, but she's shown that she's got something of a sense of humor at least.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't. I think I'm just gonna let it grow organically and see where it takes me. Uh, I think it's going to be a very different kind of book. Savage Dragon is set in real time where characters age day by day by day. So over the course of 30 years have passed uh, in that comic. I don't think I'm going to do that with Ant, but, I don't know. We'll see when I get there. At this
That's
point, I
the
don't have any little kids to deal with in the book, so that's where things start getting weird.
that's always been an interesting concept because that's very rarely done. There was, of course, the Marvel New Universe, which tried to stick to that as much as it could, and of course, Judge Dredd, because
Yeah.
Dredd himself is like 60 or 70 now. They've maintained a temporal continuity in time with their own. So that's
Well, the Marvel Universe when it started was kind of real time.
mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, Reed and Sue weren't married when the book started. They got married in the 3rd annual. She got pregnant, and they announced that in the whatever it was, 4th or 5th annual, 5th annual, something, right? And then the 6th one, they're she has the kid, so it's like, you know, and then Peter Parker started off being a kid in high school, and then he graduates, and then he goes on and he's in college.
But then
So
you always get to a point where the time scale slides in the
yeah, you know,
big
there gets to be, but you know, it's like if Stan had stuck with it and that the artists had stuck with it, maybe they would have kept going with that a little bit more than they ended up doing. I don't
I like
think, you know, it's like Franklin could have become a little kid a lot quicker than he did. He was a baby for way long.
I mean, I like to think so. I know Claremont, for instance, initially had plans of retiring Scott when he married Madeline Pryor, and that was, you know,
Yeah.
a changing of the guard there. And then I actually went when Reed had a birthday party. John Byrne was writing and drawing Fantastic Four at the time, and I counted the candles on his cake to see how old Reed was at the time, and he was supposed to be 40. And
Yeah,
I
I did that with
remember
Peter Parker.
Yeah, I remember at the time during that same time, DC had a mandate that no hero was over 28, until Mike Grell decided that Oliver Queen was going to be 38 when he did the Longbow Hunters. He wanted to age him up significantly. So, I kind of dig the fact that I like to see the characters progress. I like to see them grow. And even if Ant's on more of a sliding scale, I definitely do appreciate this sort of approach to books. Things should move on, progress. Characters should change out. Characters should grow.
Yeah, I mean things change, but it could be as simple as her suit is keeping her.
Sure.
Oh, she got injected with this stuff, and now her suit and everything that's gone has changed her physically to the point where she is not aging the same as everybody else. And it's like, all right, done. Everybody else can get old around her, and we'll just watch pieces fall off as they.
It's kind of funny because every now and then I'll see somebody like at Marvel address it. They had that what was the name of the book? Maybe it was Frontline. They had like a little spin-off book for a while where Ben Urich had his own newspaper, and they were talking to Miss Marvel and Carol Danvers at the time, for those of you who don't know.
Yeah.
And the reporter's saying, like, how old are you supposed to be? Aren't you supposed to be like 50 or 60 by now, but you still look like you're 20 something, and you've died a couple of times? So they actually, every now and then you get like an addressment of that, but it's not really in the main continuity when you think about it. So
yeah,
I kind of
they can't. They really can't. Is the thing that I can do this because I'm here, I'm in charge, I'm making up all the characters, I'm making up all the villains and the heroes, and DC can't count on somebody creating something as cool as Spider-Man. So if Spider-Man aged in real time, well, Spider-Man's been going on for 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you push it and say, oh, he was 15 at the time, it's like, well, that's still 75.
Yeah.
So if he was aging in real time, Spider-Man would be 75 years old. And it's like, he couldn't be doing what he's doing at age 75. So who's going to create the next Spider-Man? Once that character retires, who's the next one? And is the audience going to go, oh, I'm as invested in the next Spider-Man as I was in the first Spider-Man? And are you going to be as invested in the third Spider-Man and the fourth Spider-Man?
Well, this is why I appreciate people who actually have their own creation, or at the very least, they oversee it. They become that showrunner, that sort of Kevin Feige position, if you will, like yourself, or like the manga artists in Japan, or even like when you look at Mike Mignola, he writes all this Hellboy stuff, but he branched out and he allowed other people to work in his sandbox, but he oversaw everything, so it's the same vision throughout. And I feel like that's a great thing, because when you have just a singular vision for the character, there is a real, I don't want to say continuity, but it's there, but it's consistent throughout.
Yeah,
you get that consistency. It's like,
oh, okay, this makes sense, and you're not going to have somebody deciding, oh, this guy's. The problem with working at a Marvel or a DC and it being handed from one guy to the next is you've got this constant flow of the next writer coming on going, well, from my point of view, this character should be this way. And then the next guy comes along and goes, oh, that guy, what a dick. I'm going to make it totally different. And it's like you can't have characters switching gears so much. And then you've got the artists on there who are deciding, Hulk, 7 feet tall. What the hell? That's no good. He's going to be 10 feet tall. And it's like, wait a minute, or what the hell does Mary Jane looks like? She just has orange hair, right? Isn't that her defining characteristic? For years it was, no, she's got arched eyebrows and she's got a cleft in her chin and she's got dimples, and they would hammer that home, like, look, everybody's got to draw her like she's the same person. And then later on, it's like, I got to have somebody telling me that's Mary Jane, because it doesn't look like her at all.
Yeah, and part of that seems to be a failing of editorial. Like I know Big Jim Shooter gets he got a pretty bad rap from a lot of the guys
Yeah,
he worked with at Marvel in the days, but he did keep things very consistent. He was very good at his job in that way, and
and I think there's something to that,
mhm.
and you know, at the same time, people do love the individual different, you know, artists doing their take on something, you know. So it's like, I mean, people liked when Todd did Spider-Man and
Yeah,
changed a lot of the aspects of him visually. And I think that just became like, oh, if Todd can do it, why can't I do it? And now every time a new artist gets on a book, suddenly characters are gaining or losing 40 pounds and growing or shrinking a few inches, which is, I mean, it's kind of messy in a way.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, like, I mean, I love, I like Todd's spaghetti webbing a lot.
Mhm.
Uh, the big eyes took some getting used to. I kind of like the classic John Romita eyes. And I do. There are times, definitely times when I miss things being on character model, as you say. And as an artist myself, I understand. Like I'll do like recreations of characters. I like to put my own spin on them, but like I'm not doing that for the company. This is for my own amusement when I do
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, there's a certain things that I, you know, when I'm doing somebody else's character, I try to be like, all right, I'm not going to nail your style completely,
Hmm.
but if you're giving the character really big hands, I'm going to give your character really big hands because
Right.
that's the way you've established him as being. If he's, you know, if you draw him with some weird little squishy face and like way too much chin and, you know, big ears, I'm not going to come on there and be like, oh, well, my vision is he's got a completely different configuration of a face. I kind of try to approach it the same way I would if I were drawing the a real person. You
Hmm.
know, you wouldn't go, "Well, my Barack Obama is 9 feet tall." You go like, "What the hell?" No, he's got to look like the same dude. We're all supposed to be drawing the same dude. You know, if everybody's Peter Parker looks wildly different from everybody else's, and somebody's like, oh, I think you should have the Steve Rogers comb over where he's just, it's like, no, that's not even the guy anymore. That's just some totally different guy.
And that's something else that's been very consistent about your art is when I look at all the background characters that you were drawing in the Savage Dragon, all the supporting characters, all the background characters, they were all individuals I could pick out and recognize. I never had to go like, "Oh, who's that guy again?" You know, like judging by their hair color or what they're wearing, that sort of thing. And so you definitely keep that old school sensibility alive and well, and it's definitely appreciated.
Well, you try to find a face, I do at least, where you can go, okay, so you're going to be able to recognize that character from, you know, his silhouette or a very specific kind of configuration of features or something. Otherwise, you're going to constantly have to have characters call each other by name, and that just gets ridiculous.
Yeah.
Hey, look, you're another guy who looks just like me, except you've got slightly different colored hair. And when I zoom in on our faces, you would swear we're the same dude. It's like, that's no good.
Yeah, because there's some artists who I dearly love, but they tend to draw the same character faces over and over again, like Ron Lim or Jim Lee. You know, if you don't know the characters by by their hairstyle maybe or what they're wearing, you're like, that's all the same guy.
Yeah, I'm not going to go down the road of picking on anybody in particular because that'll come back to haunt me.
No, no.
But I'll just say, enough said, true
Leave that to
believer.
me. I don't have to suffer the same slings and arrows you do. And like I said, I do love all of these guys. I'm a huge fan of Ron
Yeah,
Lim,
yeah,
huge
yeah.
fan of Jim Lee. But these
Well,
are just things
there's stuff like that too where I would go, oh, I love Jack Kirby, but damn, Commandy looks an awful lot like Thor.
yes. he was
Yeah,
he was not the keenest observer of anatomy, but boy, he could draw
yeah,
that
yeah.
panel.
There's a lot of power there, though. Damn it.
Hmm. Now, when it comes to Ant, is there anything in particular you want to explore with the series? Again, going back to Dragon, because I guess it's really been the thing that I dug into most when it came to your career, because I was really, really into that book all throughout the 90s. You, if I'm not mistaken, you were a big fan of O.J. Simpson, and you based Lieutenant Frank Darling off of him. And when the trial came out, you actually incorporated some of that his fall because you're watching your hero potentially fall in real time. Are you planning exploring anything with Ant in a similar fashion? Any facet of what you're seeing going on, or anything interesting with the character mentally?
I'm kind of monkeying around a bit with some mostly the conspiracy theory type guys who just go falling down those crazy, insane rabbit holes of, oh, and then this is connected with this, and then this is connected with that. So really, that's the kind of world I want to play with her, is really that crazy, paranoid, this is all the government, and they're all doing this, and then they're manipulating that, and it has to do with the currency, and it's kind of crazy stuff. That's kind of what I want her world to be. The basic setup is that there's a group, a consortium of some sort, who are like, the end of the world is coming, so we got to prepare for the end of the world. The rapture is going to be here. We want to be able to survive a Holocaust. What if there's a nuclear war? We need to be able to survive that. So what can we do to do? And so her dad was kind of trying to come up with a way of, the whole Ant suit was a way of surviving a nuclear war. And then there's other people who are like, no, our thing is we're going to be capturing the Norse gods and the mythological gods, and we're going to have our brains get transformed into these gods. So now we'll have the bodies of these gods, and we'll be able to live forever, and we'll be able to survive. And then you've got, oh no, what we've got to do is we've got to become these volcanic people. They're able to survive anything, and somebody else will be like, no, cockroaches do everything. We got to be the cockroach people.
And this is how we're going to get to the cockroach.
And so then you've got they're sitting there going, oh, and then it's not happening fast enough. People aren't dying. We don't want to die before the apocalypse, so we got to cause the apocalypse. So then you get all this crazy people who are just going at it, trying to be, and that's kind of the fun part of that, was just, okay, well, what's real and what is just somebody having this crazy conspiracy. And then she's young. She's like this kid trying to sort through it all. So she starts getting these messages on her laptop that are saying, this is what's going on. Somebody wants to destroy the city. You need to go down in the sewer and deal with this son of a bitch, because the whole city is going to become toxic if you don't go and deal with this. So she's like, okay, if I go down to the sewer, So she's suddenly down there prowling around the sewer looking for, oh, there he is. This is real now. So now it's that this communication is going on her computer. Now she's like, this is my source. This is my guy. And she doesn't know who the hell it is. So I kind of want to play with some of that, just the madness that's going on now, where, the whole calling into question of, well, what's real, what's true, and what isn't true. Well, this is, this TV network over here, CNN, is saying this is the truth, and then you've got Fox over here that's saying no, that's not the truth. That's all BS. This is the truth. And as the viewer watching TV, you're going, I gotta pick sides here and decide what truth is. Whereas it used to be, you'd have the fairness doctrine, which Reagan got rid of, But the fairness doctrine was all like, no, this has got to be real. This is no BS. This has got to be the real stuff. And just this whole notion that, you know, they got rid of a bunch of this stuff, and now it's mayhem. And it's like, oh, anything's real. So you've got some people who are just saying, oh yeah, no, I totally won. There was an election and I totally won. And what are you doing confirming that, dude? I'm the winner. And it's like, dude, you need to have more. You can't just say you're the winner. You actually need to have the votes of the people, and you don't have that, so you're not the winner. But we're in a really weird place where you've got all these people who are just barking at each other, going, no, 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 this is real, this is real. And the other people going, no, no, no. It's like, come on.
this is such a fun idea. I love the idea of like conspiracy theorists as doomsday cultists, and the fact that because she's getting her information off the internet, who's to say what she's getting?
Oh, I know. And somebody could be hacking this other person,
she could,
and suddenly she's going someplace else and beating up somebody, and then finding out, oh no, that guy actually was good.
And then what if you find out, like, you know, like a broken clock, some of these conspiracy theorists are actually right.
Yeah.
You know, some of their crazy ideas aren't so crazy. You know, it's all paranoid.
Yeah. Every now and then there's something shows up and it's like, hey, what do you know? People did do that. Well,
this is fun. It's like now I'm imagining the flat earthers trying to cut the earth in half.
So that's a real, and I also like kind of the idea of her whole reality being in question, and as the reader, you're kind of sitting there going, well, wait a minute, did that happen, or was that just in her head? Because you started off issue 2 with her fighting terrorists, and then you cut to pages 2, 3, and she's in an insane asylum, and then later on she's fighting terrorists. Did that happen? It's got kind of a similar voiceover to the 2 different scenes. Is this still in her head, or is this real? And I kind of like having it be a little unclear necessarily of, all right, well, what are you gonna believe? Did this happen or did this not happen?
That's definitely a nice callback to the confusion of the original series. So yeah, I like the way you've taken what's gone before, and you've managed to do something that is similar, but definitely your own thing with it.
Yeah. Well, mostly I just was like, I just need this in sequence. I just want these in order. What happened? When did it happen? What's going on here? Why am I so confused? So some of it I'll pay attention to. Some of it I won't. I'm kind of dealing with some of the issues, just kind of going, all right, well, I got to have a piece of this take place now and then a piece of this take place later and break this up a little bit, because some of it also, he went on so much for so long, and like 4 issues, one into the next, into the next, into the next. It's like, that's not a scene I can just cut away to and then get back to my story. So crap, I'm going to have to break this up and revisit some of that stuff later on down the road. I don't know. It'll all make sense. I'll just be like, okay, I get it. This is a different book than what you had before. But that's one of the reasons that I inevitably decided I got to start over rather than continuing with what he'd got before. So, yeah, thumbs up, guy. Whatever.
Thanks a lot, Manuel.
Keep the readers guessing. I'll do it.
No, that's always leave them wanting more.
But really, what I wanted to do is have this book have a real different kind of tone than the Savage Dragon book. So, Savage Dragon is like, art wise, it looks one way, and then story wise, it's one way, and just have the 2 be like super different from each other. Savage Dragon right now is what is it? A mature reader's book.
Mm-hmm.
And it will not be a mature reader's book. It's a teen plus book, whatever the hell that means.
So it's really more like aside from like all the crazy kookiness that's going on, it's more your classic superhero story, if you will.
Yeah.
Little
It's my Spider-Man book.
Yeah.
For I mean,
And
it's
that
my
definitely comes
crazy
across.
paranoid Spider-Man book.
I mean, the Spider-Man thing comes across. I could even like see re-reviewing Gully's first 12 issues for Image. That when Hannah was Aunt, the Spider-Man thing really came through. So he was definitely applying your notes. Like I was getting that right away.
And it's like I'll be probably swiping from my own Spider-Man poses and swiping from Ditko Spider-Man poses.
Yeah, because it wasn't just the poses; it was also like the dialogue. It felt very Spider-Man as well, and it translates well to this character.
I think so, and I think it'll be a fun book. I can't wait to get super into it. At this point, I've got 4 issues under my belt, but it's like I want to be on issue 12 or 13 or 14.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, well,
so as long as you don't show the naughty bits, you're good to go.
That's one thing that always used to kill me about Marvel is like I appreciated when they finally stopped putting pants on monsters and the Silver Surfer. It was like, what's wrong with him just being coated in silver and you don't see his junk? Like
yeah, it's like, all right.
It's like, oh, Fin Fang Foom has to have pants. Why? Like you don't see a crocodile's balls. Like, come on, It got weird trying to meet the comics code back in the day.
Yeah, and I would think that even if they didn't back in the day, that they probably would be like, all right, this character doesn't have junk. That's fine.
I mean, like it worked for like Donald Duck. He's running around pantsless.
Yeah, he doesn't have anything going. He doesn't have boys swinging around.
Is there anything in particular you like? You enjoy more about Ant, or is it all just the total package? Do you enjoy drawing it more? Or do you enjoy writing it more? It sounds like you're having a blast writing it for sure.
Yeah, it's all of the above. It's kind of in a weird state now because I am kind of revisiting a lot of what Mario did. So there's a fair amount of me referencing directly panels that Mario drew. So it'll be like, all right, well, I want to establish that she's going to a comic book convention and it's the same comic book convention. So let me do the same establishing shot of, essentially the same street. I'll put different cars and I'll reconfigure things a little bit, but you get the idea that it's the same street. When she's walking in, it's like, okay, these will be essentially the same people that are there. There's shots throughout the comic will be like, okay, this shot is really the Mario shot, but it gets filtered through my style. So it ends up, I'm hoping that you don't see it and go, wow, that panel looks super different from any other panel you've done. Cause I'll find a way to tweak things this way or that. So it still looks consistently my own stuff, but there's definitely just little points where I'm like, I want this to feel like it's that. And I want you to realize, no, this is the same thing. This is supposed to be a different take on that same scene. So, yeah.
Now, given how much you've got on your plate, would you consider letting somebody take over the art chores while you kept writing?
Nah, that's not fun. Yeah. I can't depend on anybody is the problem with all this stuff.
There is that.
It's like plus, then I got to pay them. That's no good. And it does get to be a problem where I've done stuff before where I've hired a bunch of people, and then the numbers come in and it's like, oh, this book is not making a huge amount of money, so check it out. I just lost $3,000-4,000. That's all right. It's like, you know, you can do that. You can do that a few issues, but eventually it's like the wife comes knocking at the door going, hey, oh, sorry, honey.
I do ask that because I remember back when you had a bunch of splintered titles off Savage Dragon. I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but I did like the artist for Freak Force, fellow who's definitely inspired by John Byrne.
Victor Bridges.
That's it.
Yeah, Vic is a good guy. I like that. I like him. I like his work. He was a pleasure to work with. Good guy.
Yeah, I liked his artwork because I was a John Byrne fan. It felt like he was very influenced by John Byrne without being John Byrne, which was a nice touch.
Yeah, very much so.
All right, I guess I want to wrap with one last question here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any favorite Ant moments thus far, or do you have something you could tease us with something that you think is just going to be so fun?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just looking forward to kind of populating her universe. You know, it's kind of an opportunity to make up a whole new group of villains again.
And you're certainly good at that.
do a bunch of different stuff that I haven't gotten to do in a long time. Plus, it's a book that's set in a different city. It's set in New York for the most part and stuff like that. But so I kind of wanted to do is have this issue of, when I get to issue 12, have the new issue 12 be the same as the old issue 12 that I just did before. Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm going to do kind of the same what I did on Savage Dragon was we're all working towards a point, and then from once I get to that point, then it's all new and I can do whatever I want to. So I kind of feel like that same way on Ant, where it's like, all right, I need to get all this stuff is all backstory till issue 12, and then it's free. I could do whatever at that point. But
I like that.
There's a lot of stuff that I want to be able to do, and I haven't been able to do with a lot of characters. One of the tough things I've always seen with other people doing books with female leads has always been, how do you do a compelling romantic interest that fans don't hate?
Huh.
You know, it's like every time all those books, it's like, oh, Ms. Marvel, her boyfriend sucks. Oh, Spider-Woman, her boyfriend's an idiot. You know, She-Hulk, oh, her boyfriend's a boob. You know, and it's like,
what was wrong with Wyatt Wingfoot? I liked him.
Well, he was cheating. Wyatt was cheating. That was pure cheating, because it was like, let's take a character that everybody already is predisposed to liking and bring this character into there. And it's like, I don't have any character who's going to have that cachet coming in. So I got to build them from the ground up, you know, and that's a tougher task. You know, it's a taller order. And I think, you know, especially with male readers reading female characters, it's always like, well, he's not good enough for her. What the hell? That's all I know. She's got to be like me.
That's funny. That's sort of like a readership, you know, projection and chivalry all wrapped up into one.
Yeah, no, it's the whole. It's really tough, because it's like, how am I going to come up with a character that you're going to go, yes, he is totally worthy of her? It's like, yeah, I don't know, man. That's a tough one.
Yeah,
but I want to be up for the challenge. That to me is like the big challenge in this book was, all right, how am I going to do this so that, and it's going to take some doing, because I got a lot to get done, and it's going to take a lot of setup to go, okay, now can I have this character make friends? Can I have her world expand? Because right now she's in New York in a shitty apartment, and she's got no real source of income.
Mm-hmm.
You know, okay, how are you gonna set her up? You're gonna give her a job, like a real job, like she's, you know, oh, I gotta.
Yeah, you gotta figure out how it's all.
Pancake's gonna burn, but I gotta fight the Stilt Man, you know, it's like, are you setting up story ideas before Ant 12 that will pay off? Yeah, I mean, there's always stuff. Come on, Andy, you can't be the other guy asking questions. Yeah, so I got to get a lot of stuff before Ant 12 because Ant 12 basically takes place in a kind of a limited arena. So it's like, all right, this all's happening in this sewer, and then the end scene is with her dad. So all this stuff that goes before then will be, let me introduce a bunch of bad guys, and let me introduce a bunch of supporting characters, and let me start expanding her world a little more and fleshing it out. Then she can go into this sewer scene and have whatever adventure that is. And then it's like, okay, now following up on 12, where her dad is back into the picture and her mom is back into the picture, and now she knows somebody who, you know, I introduce a female character in issue 12 who will be a recurring character in the book thereafter. So there's at least, you know, 3 ongoing supporting characters that do get introduced in 12, but prior to that, I want to get more little pieces there and more characters established. I've got there's just a lot to do. You know, when you start off a book, you got nothing to begin with.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, well, where are all the pieces? Let me start putting this together here.
I mean, like when you did Dragon, you, by making him a cop, you really didn't do yourself any favors, because you had to introduce all these officers he was working with. They became all these supporting background characters, and you know, like Peter Parker, for instance, is pretty easy because like Aunt May and a couple of bullies.
But I mean, the nice thing with Savage Dragon is that it let me be able to have him be part of a team at the same time that he was a solo character, you know? So it's like, if I need team members, I've got Howard Neisman, and I've got Rita Metermaid, and I've got all these other things that are there that I can play off of. So it's like, oh, the whole team is going on. All right. The answer to that question, no, is the people watching this, are they seeing these questions, or
they are?
Okay. It is all in the same universe. Yes, Savage Dragon exists, and Dragon will be appearing in the book occasionally, as will some Savage Dragon villains will eventually be showing up in the book, but I don't want it to be dependent on Savage Dragon, and I don't want either book to be dependent on the other. So you can just read Ant and never read Savage Dragon, and you can just read Savage Dragon and never read Ant, and you're not going to be confused. If members of Freak Force show up in the book and she's having to deal with members of Freak Force because she's being introduced to them for the first time, we will too, as the readers of Ant. So it's like, oh, who are you, and what's your deal? What are you all about?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to treat every comic as somebody's first comic.
Yeah, and that's kind of the idea of everything. Is like, you know, I'm not going to shovel in all the backstory. I can't possibly tell you 30 years worth of backstory for every issue of Savage Dragon. But if you're reading that issue, you're going to get enough information that you can understand that issue, you know? So if a bad guy shows up, you're going to go, that character is going to be identified, and you're going to know why they're pissed off at each other, you know? So that you're not sitting there going, I don't even know who's the star of this book. What the hell's going on here?
All right. So we might, in fact, get Ant versus Arachnid again, because that's a very logical pairing.
Yeah, no, I laid out that cover for him. It's like, oh, I could draw that cover now. Let me do it. So yeah, that was kind of the thought, was to eventually do that one. And Mario had introduced a couple of villains who I have now. So, what is it? Coldburn and some green-haired lady. So it's like,
I don't remember.
yeah, there's a few different ones, and I already used some of his a little bit with that Jessica Mime girl. So it's sort of there's gets to be a little of other characters that kind of came along with Ant. It's like I basically just bought Ant and her universe minus characters that showed up really late in the series. So, I want to kind of establish some of those guys and have them go through their paces and do some cool stuff with them, And it's like, oh, you've got ice powers. So what would be a cool way of doing ice powers that aren't the same as everybody else's version of ice powers? What can I do with that? And it's like, oh, you can form these big ice fists and just get your crap out of it. It's like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Do different stuff with that. It's like, oh, I can make myself a big ice helmet or whatever.
Yeah, I like that because that's such a challenge when I'm designing a character. And I look at like the manga My Hero Academia. That guy comes up with some really cleverly original powers. Because when you're dealing with 80 years of archetypes, it's difficult to like reinvent the wheel and do something cool with it.
Yeah, but it's like you also don't want them to have totally dumb powers too.
No,
where you're just like, all right, so your arms fall off. What does that do you?
Legion of Heroes, arm fall off boy. Look him up.
Yeah, it's like, okay, what is that? Oh, I can change my feet into turtles. Like, all right, that's great. You're telling me this is going to take a while.
I actually wouldn't put that one past you, given some of the things I've seen.
Yeah, well, it's like
Turtlefoot.
Yeah, let's try this out. We can do whatever we want to. This would be cool.
I always like the guy whose head just split open into this crazy mouth.
Oh yeah, open face.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Yeah, I mean it's like all this stuff, but you don't want to do is to get into this rut where you go, oh, now I've got 6 guys who all have the same basic stuff, because that gets old.
Right, because we've all seen the guy who can catch fire and fly, and just
well, a lot of them are standard like super strength. You don't bat an eye at, oh, here comes another guy with
there we go, Turtlefoot.
There we go.
Co-created with Erik Larsen, Turtlefoot.
He's that's more of a Carl Cosmic villain than
I like it. Well, Erik, I got to say this has been a tremendous pleasure. I'm glad you came onto the show and was willing to spend some time with us here, and we learned a great deal about Ant, about Savage Dragon, about your process in general, and a lot of pretty neat history in the time that we've had together. And you have been a scholar and a gentleman, and you put your pants on, which was disappointing, but hey,
well,
can't have everything.
Yeah. I didn't know. I thought it was a family-friendly show. I had no idea that it was.
Yeah, they're only shooting us from the waist up anyway. All right. So I guess, Al, you should be listening out there. We're going to wrap this thing up. Once again, for the Comic Crusaders, I've been Bracey. This, of course, has been the legend, Erik Larsen. If you haven't heard of him before, go check out his old stuff from Marvel. Check out Savage Dragon, his very long-running creator-owned project. And, of course, check out Ant. It's new, it's exciting, and it's going to be a thrill ride by the sound of things.
All right.
Everybody, thank you all for joining us, and good night. Thanks for all the guys who messaged in as well.
All right.